Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Planet Film Network. I am one of your hosts, Sean Monk.
I'm your host, TJ Cornwell, and tonight we'll be talking about a few different things.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what we've been watching, we're going to start off with that. We're also going to go into some box office. And then I think the majority of tonight, we're going to be talking the strike, both writers and actors strike.
Mm-hmm.
And probably talk about, how that affects, obviously, the strikers and, what they're striking for. And, what the I'd say probably disagreement between the two kind of sides is. So that should be very very interesting to get into. First, of course, like I said, we're going to start with what we've been watching. And actually, real quick before we go to that, there was a lot of discourse, and me and Sean talked about this like a few minutes ago. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of discourse in the past few days about who can make I don't know really how to phrase this. Who can make content about movies and reviews, etc. If if you're looking to get into SAG in the future, or you're a part of SAG, and there's been a lot of like debate as far as at least influencers go,
Mm-hmm.
uh, especially on TikTok. Can they make content on new movies? Can they go into new contracts with studios to promote new movies, or can they finish out their current contracts? And just obviously, we probably don't need to say this, but right anyway, we don't really apply to any of that stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
believe there's like a listing on the SAG website talking about reactors
Yes.
and reviewers on YouTube, something like that. I think that's more where we fall in, and basically for that, none of this really applies to us from what we understand and what we've seen online as well. So we're gonna keep talking about the movies that are coming out. We're gonna keep discussing new movies and etc. But just wanted to like lay that out there, just because there's been a lot of confusion a few days.
Yeah, and I've seen, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of channels out there. Um, there's a lot of people out there, a lot of channels out there that unfortunately, are a lot more heavily affected by this. I mean, LA based people and New York based people and everything like that, that some potentially are in SAG, some potentially are what they call pre SAG, which is, they've been in a couple of projects. They just, for one reason or another, haven't either been accepted yet, still in review or anything like that. And so a lot of this stuff applies to all of those people, and whether it's considered struck work, which is what I guess the official term or designation is it's struck companies, struck work,
Mm-hmm.
and struck projects. Um, so one example, I listened to Force Center with Joseph Scrimshaw, Jennifer Landa, and Ken Knapsack, great Star Wars podcast out there. They one of them is SAG, one of them is pre-SAG, and one of them is in the Directors and Writers Guild and is works with SAG. So they, unfortunately, it was a great podcast to listen to talking about it. They're not going to stop talking about Star Wars, but a great example of how this is all going to work is they really have no choice but to not cover Ahsoka, period. Because that just gets into too dicey of territory. For SAG to potentially view that as promoting, struck work, just because where is the line between promoting and criticism? I think it depends on person to person and project to project sometimes. Um, but yeah, I think we're just gonna keep on chugging along here. If the tides shift, if there's a major swing to, again, something that eventually the SAG strike, if it drags on too long or anything like that, something that SAG could start to call for is, potentially boycotting these studios, just full out. The Writers Guild as well. But just if this really drags out, we could be looking at these unions begging the rest of the country to boycott these studios if it comes to that point. So if something like that were to happen, obviously, we'd reassess everything like that. If the line in the sand is drawn like even clearer of, hey, we really don't want anybody out there doing anything about this, even then, we're not a part of the unions per se or anything like that. So I think we just got to kind of play it by ear. But for now, I don't think you have to worry about anything leaving other than the fact, and TJ, I'm going to kind of wrap this into what we've been watching, but I just want to get your thoughts. I want to check in really quick if I can try to salvage this pivot as much as I can. Some of you may have noticed that a certain piece of content has stopped on the channel, and that is the Secret Invasion episode reviews. I did not put one out for episode 4. Where are you at with this show right now? And we got 4 people watching right now. Let us know, where are you guys at with Secret Invasion? Are you still on the Secret Invasion train? Are you excited for it? Is Marvel just not kind of doing it for you lately? Where are you at with this show, TJ?
Man, I gotta really think back. I think I texted you that I thought this was probably the worst episode so far this season.
Yeah, that was all we've talked about it.
Yeah, a lot of it just, I feel like kind of happening very messy, I guess. I thought the best, if I can speak positively, the best part of the episode for me was between Fury and his wife. Sitting at the table and that kind of tension building with the 2 guns and the shooting, and we're looking around the apartment, we don't know what happened, and it does turn.
I'll tell you, for me, that just fell flat completely. I was just sitting there like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, and then when nothing even happened, I was like, but then I saw some reviews that were like, that was so poignant and beautiful, and I was like, we just met this character an episode ago.
Part of the episode, in a lackluster episode.
Yeah.
The whole kind of, I thought the worst part of it was the end kind of battle sequence, the last 10-15 minutes. That all felt very messy to me. There was no, we saw the president once before this episode. Yeah. And then we kind of get this plan where it's like, well, when was this talked about? Like, when were we talking about going after the president and, blowing up his motorcade and all the, like, this just, I don't know.
I hadn't even thought about it like that, but yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, when did we decide we were doing this? And then, we have Gravik, he's now a super scroll, I would say. He's got his Groot arms. When did they get all those powers? I know, like, we saw, like, the whole
same time Gaia did, I guess.
Off
screen is what I meant.
Screen, which I just hate. It's like, show us, like, him getting his power. Who else got the powers? And the whole kind of last thing I'll say real quick, the whole Rhodey kind of reveal. I saw on a TikTok, so I wasn't that surprised, but even then, it kind of fell flat for me. I thought that it was a woman scroll was interesting. Thought that was an interesting kind of twist there, but the whole kind of reveal kind of was like, okay, it does make me wonder how long that she's been impersonating Rhodey.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a logical question to have, of just like, oh, how long is it? Same way that we've had with Everett Ross in the very beginning of the show. But I think I've just come to the realization that I don't think the show cares to tell us. I just really feel like it's this pattern now, and I've liked a lot of the Disney Plus shows, but some of them I have like loved, and I think that they're like well and clear above the other ones. But a lot of them just fall into this category where, like, tonight we're about to get the 5th episode. And I just feel like at this point in the season, like, we should be knowing a lot more of where we're at. Like, a lot more should be going on. Like, I don't even really understand still what I feel like the question at the heart of this show is, which is, okay, Fury failed in his promise. Why did he fail in his promise? Why didn't he find them a home? And I feel like the show's just not going to answer that. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, it's very, very weird to me. But yeah, I mean, I think I'll definitely check back in with it. Who knows? If tonight's episode is really, really good, I'll probably throw up a video on the channel probably tomorrow night. But for now, I think I'm a little just less enthusiastic on Secret Invasion as a whole. But TJ,
can you just go into my can you just click on my camera and just raise my volume like 20 something? Yeah, just to follow up real quick. Yeah, I don't really know where we're going. I
Mm-hmm.
sucks because it started off really well. I felt like, and I was like, we're back. We're back after a slew of kind of few misses. The MCU was back, and and I think another thing too. I think when the episode originally came out, you were like, it's only 35 minutes. Like you had set the precedent early with the first, I think, two episodes. They were
Yeah.
like you do an hour,
Mm-hmm.
maybe first episode, and then you go back to the shorter run times. It's like what just
It's like a bait and
and it,
switch.
yeah, and just let us get some more time with these characters. Again, Olivia Colman. I don't know why is she even in this show?
Was she even in this episode?
That's what I'm trying. I don't think she was. She's only been in two of them, and she's only in the first one. I think she was in the first one. It was only there. She was
Mm-hmm.
only there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and like
Top.
another thing that I'm just remembering too is just like we're just it's like it's this thing that I think a lot of these Marvel Disney Plus shows have had of we are just like zooming through big stuff and just like stewing in stuff that I feel like we don't need to be stewing in. Like last episode, not the episode that just aired, but episode 3, there was a whole thing with the UN plane was going to get shot down with a nuclear missile, and we like dealt with that and wrapped it up in like 12 and a half minutes. And then it's like nobody's talking about it. Like nobody's like, "Oh my god, like thank god that was averted," but
Mm.
oh my god, now we're dealing with this president. It's like the show is just like following Nick Fury through these big events that are happening to him of like, just yesterday I avoided a nuclear missile attack and now today I'm saving the president in his convoy. And it's
Mm.
just like I feel like we're just kind of bouncing from like thing that happened to thing that happened.
Right.
And then in particular, I think what happens at the end of this episode, which I guess I'll refrain from spoiling, but the big thing that happens at the end of this episode to a certain character, like, I don't even have faith that that's going to be true or that it's going to stick or, whatever you might want to say about it. And personally, I hope that it doesn't. Like, I would like to see a continuation with that. But I just think that like big stuff like that is just kind of being treated so like kind of like nonchalantly. Like the Rhodey reveal, it's not like oh my god, Fury really trusted him in this series and then in episode 4 we find out that Rhodey's a Skrull. It's like from the moment that we see Rhodey this season, he's being antagonistic towards Fury. So it's
Right.
like he just went from being an antagonist to being a villain, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, that's not very interesting. Like if he had like been like, Nick, listen, I'm on the inside, I'm pulling for you, but you got to get your act together, and then maybe they team up to stop the maybe it's Fury and Rhodey and Talos, maybe all three of them, team up to stop the nuclear attack or something like that. So you really trust Rhodey, and then the reveal happens. Then it's really, uh it's earned more so in the exact same amount of screen time. Just by changing, how the plot unfolds with him, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think it's been interesting, but not the best. Quickly in chat, Michelle says, "I'm still excited about Secret Invasion. I am following it, or I'm allowing it to play out before I make any final decisions on it. If this falls flat completely at the end, it will be a big disappointment because I really wanted this big show for Fury and all this being worth his wanting to come back to Earth. So far, I'm not seeing it." Yeah, I think that's very fair. TJ, do you want to start off with some stuff that you have been watching?
Well, I could if I'd watched anything.
Okay.
Just real quick. So watched literally no movies since Mission Impossible. Unfortunately, I was gonna watch Big Short earlier today. I just didn't get to it. Just as a rewatch. No shows I've watched. I have not progressed any farther in I Am in Love with a Mama's Boy to report. But yeah, that's it. Other than Secret Invasion, I think that's the only thing I watched. I did start Heat 2 because I was
There you
interested.
go.
Really like the original Heat. So decided to pick this one up. Good so far. I'm only like 30 pages in, so I can't really give you any thoughts. But and then last night I finished One Temple in Tears of the Kingdom. Finally finished the Wind Temple.
Boom.
Very fun. Still a lot more game to go, but I'm making progress. So happy to report that. But that's all for me. That's all I got.
Fair enough. I will just say really quick here. We'll probably clip this out into a TikTok. The only movies that I have watched are in fact the Mission Impossible film franchise, which I was staying away from before we watched Dead Reckoning Part 1, just because I didn't want to do the typical where I'll like rewatch an entire series leading up to the new one. I wanted to just go into Dead Reckoning like kind of, I don't know if fresh is the right word, but just kind of like without all the baggage of the entire franchise being like so fresh in my mind. And I really enjoyed that. I thought that was a great way to see it. But I had like 2.5 technically days off, really technically like 72 hours of, time. But I had a lot of time off work between schedules, and it just really worked out for me. So I was able to watch a lot of stuff, which was mainly the Mission Impossible movies, which I will go through really quick here, which I just realized I do not have. There we go. So this is, as of right now, including Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, I have at number 7 Mission Impossible 2. Didn't really do it for me. I get the whole John Woo factor. I get that it's a very stylized thing, that if you're into that, you're into that. Doesn't really work for me. Next up, this might be unfair in my rewatch just because I think it's sandwiched between two really excellent Mission Impossible movies, but it in itself is excellent. I put Mission Impossible 4 Ghost Protocol at number 6. Which is lower than I had it previously. But number 5, I have Mission Impossible 1. Brian De Palma, I think, fantastic entry to this franchise. Some beautiful shots, some really interesting camera work, everything like that. And I also just think for a movie that's almost 30 years old, it just looks fantastic. Number 4, I have Mission Impossible 3. So J.J. Abrams, first introduction of Michelle Monaghan in this, first introduction of Benji with Simon Pegg, character that I've really come to love. So Mission Impossible 3. Also some great action and some great tension, and Philip Seymour Hoffman gives a fantastic performance. Top 3, number 3, Mission Impossible 5 Rogue Nation. For me, I think really, really fantastic. Somebody who is an unsung hero in both Rogue Nation and Fallout is, I think, Alec Baldwin. I think coming in 5, him and Jeremy Renner, they're kind of back and forth. Their antagonism towards each other, I think, really, really is a fun kind of interplay throughout the movie. But I also just think that the movie itself is fantastic. Number 2, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, I have as my second favorite of the franchise. Still want to see it a couple more times. I'm definitely going to see it a couple of more times, but really, really enjoyed it. But for me, it does not yet beat out my number 1 spot, which I think is still held by the 2018 king of Mission Impossible 6, Fallout. Rewatching this, I mean, Henry Cavill, Vanessa Kirby being introduced, continuing the great character of Ilsa Faust that was introduced in Rogue Nation with Rebecca Ferguson. So much great stuff in there. Again, Alec Baldwin, fantastic in this one as well. Some really, really great scenes with him and Henry Cavill. Angela Bassett also really good in this. But, the stunts, everything's beginning, middle, and end, start to finish. I just think that Fallout is the best one. And I will be interested to see if Mission Impossible 8 will be able to top it. But yeah, that is where I've been with that. And then in terms of watching stuff, the other 2 things that I have watched is Jury Duty and Hijack. So Jury Duty got a couple of Emmy nominations. And I mean, if you want to later on, if we run out of stuff to talk about, we could talk about the Emmy nominations too. But most likely because of the strikes, the Emmys are being pushed way, way back. So it's going to be a long time before we even get to the Emmys. But nonetheless, Jury Duty was nominated for, I believe, Best Limited Comedy Series. And James Marsden was nominated for Best Supporting Actor in a limited series. I really, really love Jury Duty. Do you know anything about this show?
Now, question: looking at your letterbox, which
that
jury...
is not the real one. That's I just did that to remind myself.
No, but no, I've heard of it. I have not watched it.
So, do you know like what it is about though? Like what the conceit of the show is? Okay. So, basically this show, so it's on Prime Video. It was on, I think it's called Freevee, which is their like free arm of Prime Video essentially. But if you
end of IMDb TV.
Oh, okay, there you go. It's the rebrand of IMDb TV. But if you have just straight up Amazon Prime, you can also just plug it in and watch it right on there. And it's only, I think it's 8 episodes, and they're about 25 to 30 minutes each. And basically, it is this entire process from start to finish of jury selection through the trial up to the end of the trial. The only thing is the main guy is a real guy, and every single other person is an actor. And the whole thing is, it's loosely scripted, but it's mostly improv. And the big, kind of key about it is James Marsden. James Marsden is in this series, and he plays himself, and he is fantastic, and he got nominated for Best Supporting Actor in a limited series, and I think that he really deserves it. The places that he kind of goes to, playing this kind of parody version of himself almost, but also, like, keeping it feeling very real, like it is a very good performance. I think it's just fantastic. Really, really, really great series. Everybody that's been hyping it up is telling the truth. And yeah, go watch it for sure on Amazon Prime. Again, every week here, I feel like I'm talking about a different Apple TV Plus show. By the way, they got to get a better name than Apple TV Plus. They just gotta call it like Apple Plus or something, or just Apple TV. But it's one too many syllables for me. It was like CBS All Access. I'm so glad they changed that to Paramount Plus. Like, it's just so much better. Yeah. Apple TV Plus, another excellent show that I think I talked about a couple weeks back when it had its first episode out. But I am currently caught up again, and the new one comes out tonight, of Hijack, starring Idris Elba. So again, I talked about this a couple weeks ago, that it is this show that is taking place over a 6.5 hour plane flight, and the show's total runtime is 6.5 hours. So it is from start to finish, this plane ride from Dubai back to London, and it's a primarily English cast, like UK cast, but there is a ton of stuff going on. It all takes place, quotes, in real time, but you're following the events of not just the people on the plane, but the people on the ground, the people investigating it, and then almost every episode they add a new layer, to the point where now, we are dealing with, like, the UK Interior, Secretary, we got a little bit of a tease that perhaps the Prime Minister is going to be alerted to this by the next episode. So it's one of those things that it's that minute of how much you're really going through this is, this episode, one of the things they were dealing with was, hey, do we call the Prime Minister yet? And they were like, no, we need to wait for more information. And I just love that stuff. Just kind of the inner workings of it is really fascinating to me. And that's just what's on the ground. The plane stuff is absolutely fantastic. I think Idris Elba is giving a phenomenal performance. A ton of other supporting characters as well, and supporting actors giving phenomenal performances in this as well. So yeah, really, really liking Hijack so far. Very much so. But that is pretty much all I have been watching this week. All right, I'll say here, what are your plans? And we got 7 people watching us, so let us know as well. Anybody watching right now, also, first of all, I just want to say this really quick because on our live streams, we put it in our videos and our live streams, we almost never say this out loud. If you're watching us right now, give a like, give a chat in the live stream, give a subscribe. We are on our way to 600 subscribers thanks to you guys. Let us know, what you guys want to see on the channel and everything. But while you're here, go ahead, hit that. And thank you guys for joining us. But what are your plans for Barbenheimer? How are you seeing it? When are you seeing it?
So as much as I would have loved to do a sort of
double trouble,
same day, it's not going to happen just due to scheduling. We also have a wedding to go to this weekend, so it kind of makes time a little bit more shortened and scarce. So Thursday we are going to see Barbie. And then Friday we're going to see Oppenheimer.
Interesting. Okay.
Interesting. Just a quick question for you. This is business related to your place of work. So I purchased tickets 2 separate days. I bought tickets on the app for Oppenheimer, so they showed up in my previous purchases. But when I bought them for Barbie, I bought them on my computer, and they don't show up in the app. Is that like normal?
Were you logged in on both?
Logged in. Yes. Oh, actually, you know what? Maybe I wasn't.
There you go.
Maybe I wasn't.
There you go. Yeah, that's probably why. But yeah, I secured my tickets very lucratively. I feel like to Oppenheimer first, which I am going. So I should just say as well. I am going on Friday to attempt the double feature, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be all good. But tickets are limited. I am going to see Oppenheimer first at a 3:10, and then I'm going to go see Barbie second, probably at like a 7 o'clock or something like that. Okay. But yeah, I'm definitely doing Oppenheimer first. Those tickets are locked in just because where I work in particular, the premium format that I work at is very much selling out every single show of every single day. So it is going to be what's the word? Not fun. Not fun to work, but very fun to see it. But yeah, that is the plan, is to do the full Barbenheimer experience. And that is only because I usually do have Fridays off, and I was able to get this Friday off, so very thankful for that. But yeah, who knows how many other maybe I'll see one of which another time, I don't know. But for me, honestly, right now I'm more concerned about being able to rewatch Mission Impossible after I see both of these upcoming movies, rather than seeing either of them again, just because I really love Mission Impossible, but I don't know when I'm going to be able to squeeze in some additional viewings, but I really want to. But yeah, so we will most likely have our reviews up on the channel. Since we're not seeing it together, we're probably gonna each have 2 separate ones. Also, you see it at the top of the screen there. Follow us at the official PFN on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. TikTok especially, TJ has been putting up a bunch of different clips from our live streams and everything like that. A couple of our trailer reactions as well. And I know he'll probably put his out of the theater reaction up for Barbie or Oppenheimer. And I will have my out of theater reactions up on the channel for Barbie and Oppenheimer as well. So yeah, let us know in the chat what you guys are going to be doing. Danielle in the chats, or Soul Sanctum said, with Noah Schnapp and Hook. I'm not sure what that is. If you can let us know. Danielle says, I love how both films are just promoting doing a double feature rather than trying to get people to see their respective film. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are seeing that as very refreshing. Maybe, what the heck? A lot of people are seeing that as very refreshing, that, when promotion was able to be done, as of last week, that a lot of people were, a lot of the interviewers on the red carpet were asking everybody for both movies, what are you going to see first? It really does kind of feel like a good cross-pollination, you know, platform, but also, you know, I think they realize that they obviously are counter-programming to each other. You know, you look at this, whenever Star Wars was coming out in December, you know, there would be a big studio comedy opening opposite it, so that, you know, there would be different things for different people. But also, I think Danielle makes a good point that this you know, is kind of a unique thing where you wouldn't normally think that there would be crossover between these two audiences, but because they're both being made by two of the most powerhouse, you know, what am I even trying to say? Two of the most powerhouse and like biggest like fan bases directors out there right now, with Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan. I think that helps a lot with a ton of people out there wanting to see both. And I know AMC, the theater company, was actually selling tickets to both as double features, and I think as of the last time I saw, there was like 25,000 tickets sold to the double feature that they were like selling the package of tickets, which is insane. So, you know, I think it'll definitely do good in the box office. But let's transition over. And actually, I'll leave it up to you. Do you want to do a little box office first, or talk a little Barbie reactions first?
Let's do box office first.
All right. So we got a good amount to talk about here with box office, some interesting stuff. Some stuff that we've been tracking, and some stuff that unfortunately has not gone the way that some of these studios have hoped, which is not surprising at this point. But we got to start off, TJ, all the way down at the lowly number of... actually, you know what? I lied. Let's start at 16 really quick, because I want to talk about number 16, which actually doesn't even have a placement because it's so high up. But that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, wrapping up its entire run here with a total of about $840 million, $839 million right now to be exact. And I only bring that movie up because it's lasted in theaters, still playing at my theater. A ton of our local theaters here are still playing it. We are dropping it this week, but that's because it got its official Disney Plus launch date, which is August 2nd, which is nice. That's the 9-year anniversary of the first movie. So I think that's very cool that they're doing it like that too. And it just goes to show you, you know, what is that? It was 4 full months in theaters. 4 full months in theaters for this movie. And I think it just goes to show you that when you trust an audience, trust the release window, and not announce that it's going on Disney Plus a month later, you know, you can really maximize your numbers here. And I think they did just that. Speaking of minimizing your numbers, number 13, The Flash, which is a movie that has already been dropped by many of our local theaters. We are no longer playing it. I believe we're playing one 11:30 a.m. show per day, basically just to run it to meet our studio requirement with our film buyer. Yeah.
It's going to be the first movie on blockchain. See that announcement the other day?
Yeah, you could buy it as a BLT.
Sure. Don't know what that meant.
Or an NFT.
NFT? No, there was like I don't know, it was something with like, oh, here's this interactive adventure.
No, yeah, I saw that. Yeah. They were like, you can get deleted scenes.
Exclusive behind the scenes.
Yeah. Like, do you want to see more of this movie? No, but I will say, to be fair, I was scrolling TikTok the other day, and I did open spoilers for The Flash. If you haven't, you probably aren't going to see it. I did see a scene that reminded me that I'm going to rewatch this when it hits Max, because I saw the scene that was younger Barry kind of having his, or older Barry kind of having his like blow up moment at younger Barry, where he's like, you need to take this seriously because you are just being, and it reminded me that for all the, bad CGI and, you know, is it the best superhero movie ever? No. Ezra Miller, they are giving a pretty damn good performance in that movie when they're given the ability to. I do think that there are moments there, especially that one in particular, when younger Barry is just being annoying and everything, and the older Barry kind of, you know, reminds him of the significance of what is happening and that he's got to take stuff seriously. So I'll give the movie that. I think it still does have its moments.
I have enjoyed seeing the HD, like CG shots of all the worlds,
like the one of Henry Cavill and stuff.
Yeah, on Twitter, and it looks really not good. I've seen some like kind of
It's
those
really not good.
fan accounts
Mm-hmm.
like defending it or whatever. And I think one of them was like something about like the Nick Cage Superman,
Mm-hmm.
and the one tweet was like they like I can't believe they did this after Nick Cage was like, oh, I don't want to play Superman or something like that. Something about his career or whatever. And it's like they drag this out here and they show it to everybody like it's ridiculous or something. And I don't know. It was just like I like seeing people on Twitter try to like justify how good how certain scenes like kick ass in the Flash or whatever, and it's like no, they just don't. They don't.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, I think like it's not, I don't know, it's like it's moments in the movie. Like when I'm thinking, and as much as I did enjoy it the first time I saw it, the only time I saw it, now a couple weeks later, it's really just moments that are like sticking with me. You know what I mean? It's like when the younger Barry gets his powers and he runs through the city and it's kind of this like happy, joyful thing. That to me was when the movie was the most like, wow, this is what a Flash movie can be. I really, really like that. But again, that's like 25 seconds of a 2+ hour movie. But yeah, The Flash absolutely bombing out of theaters entirely, only at $260 million. Massive, massive disappointment to the studio. Another massive disappointment that we have to talk about really quick here is DreamWorks Animation. Their biggest bomb of their studio ever, easily. Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken, closing out its box office run with only $34 million on a, I believe, reported $75 million budget. So really, really not a good look for that movie. Number 10, hanging on in its in its 8th week of release here. Number 10, The Little Mermaid. No pun intended, kind of legging it out here. Not necessarily going to be this massive profit engine, but it's important to remember it's a $547 million. It's important to remember that box office, while it's great to make a profit at the box office, it's not the only revenue stream that some of these movies have for these studios, and Little Mermaid was one in particular. Think of the Happy Meal toys, think of the Funko Pop sales, think of the posters at Walmart, think of so much marketing is tied into this movie and extra materials and everything like that, that most likely Little Mermaid at the end of the day is going to be financially successful for the studio, but they're not going to be making, hand over fist at the box office, which is something that you want to be doing, like they luckily got. And again, this is Marvel compared to Disney proper, but, like Marvel did for Disney with Guardians. Guardians is a movie that it got up to that break-even point and then just kept making even more money. So, that's where you really want to be, and not a lot of movies are doing that this year. Another one that is starting to do that this year is Transformers Rise of the Beasts. It's a $421 million. Again, something that kind of started off a little slow, $64 million opening, but has been able to just stay at the box office and keep going. And that's largely because word of mouth that, hey, this one's not that bad. That really goes a long way for like a Transformers movie, and I feel like you're seeing that in the numbers, only dropping 33% this past week, which is really, really good. Spider-Verse still holding super, super strong. $664 million right now at the box office. If we're not including Guardians in this, which you probably shouldn't because it's beginning of May, Spider-Verse probably going to wind up being the top movie of the summer, although maybe Barbie will just come in and just absolutely pancake it somehow. But I don't know if I see that happening.
I think there's a chance.
I think there is a chance. I think Barbie's going to be higher up on the summer list here than a lot of people thought, I think. Something that a lot of people thought was that Elemental was just completely DOA. Elemental staying at the number 5 spot. Again, I think this is benefiting from the Puss in Boots syndrome of you just have this enormous gap where there is no other kids animated product that is really grasping audiences. We did have Ruby Gillman come out, but that really has not drawn really any interest from the audience, to be honest, really anything at all. So Elemental went from I believe it was a $28 million opening weekend. It's now made $313 million. Again, it's still got a long way to go to be a massive like money maker for Disney, but I mean, obviously Pixar's got to be happy that it's not just completely dead. Again, number 4, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. A little bit worse story there, only hitting $303 million in its third week. It is still going to keep going, but you're now getting into kind of Mission Impossible and then probably Oppenheimer really cutting into that dad, that parent, that a little bit older crowd, but also just big spectacle action crowd, that would have gone to Indy on repeat viewings. I think a lot of that is going to go out the window. You already see every single week it's been dropping about 50 to 55%. I think you're going to see that continue, if not maybe even a bigger drop, like 70% next week once Oppenheimer comes out. Another great story here for Sony, and in particular Patrick Wilson, his directorial debut, Insidious: The Red Door, which I definitely know neither of us have seen, or are most likely planning on seeing. For me, just because I don't watch the franchise. For TJ, he's got a thing with horror movies at the cinema. But the numbers on this are anything but a horror story because it's at about $124 million on a reported $18 to $25 million budget, which, oh my God, making a huge amount of money for the studio there. Then a movie that we talked about last week, pretty in depth here. I'm just going to keep it brief because there's a lot going on with this movie that is kind of all over the place right now. But basically, I'll boil it down to, if these numbers are accurate, a massive, massive, massive weekend for Angel Studios and only their second debut feature film, Sound of Freedom. It actually had a 39% increase at the worldwide box office, mainly domestic. Yeah.
Something real quick that I think just occurred to me. Something that Sound of Freedom really is benefiting from, I feel like, is the narrative of
the word of freedom,
not wanting people to see this movie. People posting on TikTok, oh, the AC is out, oh, they paused the movie, they refund. So then it gets people to go, oh, well, now I want to see it. I'm gonna show the government, show the people that are telling me not to watch this movie, I'm gonna go see it. So I'm just saying, I think that's a really big boost that they're getting, and I'm sure, maybe they didn't think that was gonna happen. That type of that viral kind of marketing that they were getting, they didn't think that was gonna happen. But at the same time, I'm sure, in some of the back of their heads, they're like, maybe there will be something where, people feel they need to take a stand and see this movie to, fight back or something, and I definitely think this movie's probably benefiting in that, which, good for them, obviously. And then we talked about the whole ticket thing last week too.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure goes into that movie and everything like that. But again, with the ticket thing that we talked about last week, if these numbers are to be believed, about a $14 million production budget. I want to be very clear because those same TikTokers are out there going, oh my God, and every single comment on almost every single movie YouTube channel in the past weeks has been $14 million movie and it's made $100 million. Not quite. So if it is, it's a $14 million production budget, but this movie has had a lot of rights transfers and rights sales that basically at the end of the day, the money sunk into this is definitely a lot more than $14 million. But that being said, I can't see it being more than, maybe $35 million with all the fees and everything of the, rights being sold back and forth between a couple different companies here. So if the numbers are to be believed and it's $85 million, this movie is still definitely a smash hit for Angel Studios, who has another movie, I believe, coming out next year. Again, kind of geared towards that faith-based crowd that obviously their whole MO is. So I'll be interested to see what happens with that, if they take the same sort of give a ticket, get a ticket model thing that they do. I'll be interested to know if they do that again. Hopefully, maybe they'll be a little more clear cut about the finances and the numbers on all that stuff. But still, a massive weekend for Sound of Freedom. And then the main thing here this week to talk about at the box office, of course, is the brand new movie, which is Mission Impossible 7 Dead Reckoning Part 1. TJ, what was the overarching narrative that you saw on Twitter? Like, what was was it a sink or swim, a success or a failure? What was the algorithm pushing out to you? Because I feel like everybody was split on this movie.
Yeah, I feel like the more I saw was that it was disappointing. Maybe more domestically probably than internationally. I probably would have maybe expected around 100 domestic, closer to 100, 100 plus. But, it's still the first week, we still got a few weeks, I think this movie definitely has some staying power for repeat viewings. I definitely want to see it again. So, I think we could probably see it get into the, 5, 6, 7, worldwide mark at some point. Probably just within a few weeks, I'd imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the staying power, and if you look at the Mission Impossible movies, none of them have opened massively. I mean, you look at Mission Impossible Fallout, for example. Mission Impossible Fallout had a worldwide opening weekend of 61 million, or sorry, I'm sorry, a domestic opening weekend of $61 million. So you look at that compared to Dead Reckoning Part 1, and it's really not that far off when you're looking at the 3-day weekend, where the Mission Impossible franchise gets very tricky to kind of, calculate, is the fact that every single one of them has opened on a 5-day weekend. Not one of them hasn't. So whether that's one of them, I believe, was opened on a Friday, but then the holiday was on a Tuesday, so it was like a 5-day weekend that way. This one opened on a 5-day weekend, but because it opened technically on Monday, so it had a very, very long time to make its money. And I think that's where some of the initial confusion was coming from, of people saying, Mission Impossible only brings in $53 million opening weekend domestically. That was a big number that I saw, was $53 million. That is its 3-day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday opening weekend. But it's very unfair to the movie to not count the fan events, the preview nights, when, let's be honest, most of the hardcore fans are going to those shows. So it's very easy to write a tweet or write an article that says Mission Impossible only made $53 million in its opening weekend. But if you look at its opening 5 days, it made almost $25-30 million just in the opening Tuesday and Wednesday. So, there's a lot more to this movie than I think, certain people are running with. And then, like you mentioned, all of this back and forth of is it good, is it not, is really just about domestically, because when you look at the 5-day total for the worldwide opening weekend, you're talking about $240 million opening. I mean, this is a successful opening for this movie, without a doubt. It's a trend we've been seeing this year more and more. Much, much, much bigger opening internationally than it is here in the States. Bringing in $154.98 million internationally, which gives it a total opening weekend of $238 million. So, I think the reported budget on this was $290 million, which, is that super expensive? Absolutely. But also, you got to remember, this movie shot for 4 years during the peak of COVID. It is one of those movies, just like Indiana Jones, that you got to talk about the fact that, there are movies like Wakanda Forever that, shot towards the tail end of the pandemic, were finished and released all within that. This movie began filming in 2019. So, you really got to keep that in mind when you're talking about, the budget on this, that unfortunately was heavily ballooned. But it's also one of those things that, you look at some of the paydays of the people in here. Tom Cruise, granted, he is a He's not credited as a writer, but he is very heavily involved with the story. He's a very heavily on hand set or hands-on producer on set. And then as well, obviously, putting his own life on the line for these movies and also acting in it as the main star. So, he's pulling triple duty here. But there are, reports that he collected anywhere between $60 to $80 million for this film. But, is that worth 4.5 years of your life? What do it's up to whoever. But anyways, I'm just saying that's one element of the very, very big budget on this movie is just direct payouts to some of these stars. But TJ, what are your thoughts on here? Do you think Mission Impossible, like you said, do you think it will leg out here? Because again, looking at the franchise history, Fallout opens to $60 million, winds up making $800 million. Now, granted, this movie has some more direct competition this very week with Oppenheimer, but I feel like if it can get over that Oppenheimer hurdle, it's really going to have the rest of the summer and into the fall to really just kind of have a run at people coming to see it over and over again. So what do you think, if you had to prognosticate here to the future of the end of this box office run, how do you think things are going to wrap up for Mission Impossible 7?
Yeah, I think it's going to get pretty close, probably to Fallout. Well, I don't think, Dead Reckoning is a better movie than Fallout. I think it's, it comes pretty close.
Yeah.
And I could definitely, like I said before, I can definitely see people coming back multiple times to watch this movie. It's just that good. And I think you said last week where, not considering John Wick, Mission Impossible is probably the best summer action movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, again, that just adds another layer. But yeah, already at 238, 238 million after just basically a full week. I'd say that's pretty good so far. So, it's gonna do another 200 mil this week. No, but I think after 6-7 weeks, we'll get to that 6-7 mil mark at some point.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think a good movie to kind of example this up to is Guardians. Obviously, Guardians opened much bigger because it is a Marvel movie and a very good Marvel movie at that. But I do, see, but again, I say that, but when you look at the worldwide of 240 million, Guardians opened to 256 million in its worldwide opening weekend. So it really is kind of comparable. And, other than us talking about it on this show, nobody really talked about Guardians after the first 3 weeks, but it just kept staying. It just kept staying at the theaters and making more money every single week to the point now where, you're looking at well over $800 million. And, if Mission Impossible can get, like you said, even to 600 or 700 million, I think you're going to be in a perfectly good spot here. And it's not like they're going to stop making Mission Impossible movies because of this one, performance of this movie that was heavily influenced by COVID. So I think it'll be an interesting movie to track here, but I do think it'll definitely hit profitability. I don't think this is a Fast X situation by any means. All right, let's see here. All right, TJ, let's talk a little bit about. Actually, let's hit Barbie real quick. So Barbie, review embargo dropped tonight, just before we went live at 7 p.m. Oh, there you go. We were about to go over its tomato meter that it was at, I believe, 92%. It's actually gone down a little bit after I just refreshed it. It's currently at 88% on the tomato meter. People basically saying that it is a very, very good movie that sometimes lacks in a couple of areas, but that it is pretty good. You want to read off, just pick one or two of these first early reactions here to Barbie up on the Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Real quick, David Sims of the Atlantic writes, combining the meta jokiness with a heap of motivational sincerity is no easy task, but Barbie is a very charming success. I will also read Tomris Laughley from The Wrap says, soulful film underneath all the persistent fuchsia, one that has heart and ambition as well as abundant beauty inside and out. So 2 very, very positive reviews so far.
There you go. And one here by, let's see, Ann Manoff. And I will say, take it for what it's worth. I know you guys can see it on stream here. These two negative reviews don't have a picture attached to it, but it's very interesting. Roger Friedman, maybe friend of the show, Brandon's relative there. Despite plucky stars Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling and a stylized production design for the ages, the movie itself is a mystery shrouded in a puzzle. Who is this movie for? Beats me. So, I think it's a little, and I've seen that. I've seen some first impressions from Chris Stuckman, Jeremy Johns, Christian Harloff, a couple different people online that had gotten a chance to see the movie early. And I think overall, a lot of them said the same thing, that the production values, some of the performances, especially obviously Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, which you'd expect, but more importantly, the production design and everything about the look and feel of this movie is like phenomenal, but that maybe it is lacking on some of the story elements. And I think that we're seeing that a lot with some things lately, and I just think that, I would say that I'm shocked at this, but I think this was always a movie that maybe was not going to be for everyone. And I still think that even if it's maybe not for, quote unquote, for you, I still think there's going to be stuff that you can enjoy about this. But what are your thoughts on some of the things we've seen here, things we've read so far, and the fact that it's debuting with this 88%?
I think the 88% is very good news. But no, I'm not surprised really that it is a kind of, I guess, divisive movie. Everything that I've seen says it takes really big swings.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're on board with those swings or not is going to determine whether you liked it or not. But hey, I'm still excited.
I agree 100%. I'm still very excited for it, but I guess we shall see. I'm glad we have the opportunity to see both. So sounds like Oppenheimer review embargo is not up yet, but the social media reactions definitely are, and everybody is saying that it is fantastic. So I'll be excited to see where the numbers fall with that movie. But it sounds like there's still going to be stuff to love, at least in both of these movies. So I'm very happy about that. Something I've not been very happy with, TJ. We've talked about him to death on this channel. We have sung his praises. We have rooted for him. We have been hopeful at his return. And that is, of course, the CEO with the most himself, but maybe the most in his pocketbook. And that is Walt Disney Company CEO Bob Iger, who recently returned to the company after a very, very rocky road with its previous CEO, who took over from Bob Iger, who was Bob Chapek, who really
was that a year?
I believe it was a year and 8 months. I think.
Gotcha.
So yeah, Iger comes in. This was just about not quite a year ago. I want to say maybe like 8 months ago, 7 or 8 months ago. Iger announces that he's coming back to the studio. That he will be replacing Bob Chapek. It was in a late night Elton John concert, rope-a-dope, that they fired Chapek, and all of a sudden Bob Iger was back before Elton John finished Piano Man. So it was a crazy night at the Walt Disney Company, but the point being, a lot of people were singing his praises of, oh, thank God, this is going to get the company back on track. This is going to reverse some of the poorer decisions that were being made at the company. And that was all the way up until last week when I said on this very show, you see the villain, the quote-unquote villain of this strike so far being David Zaslav and a couple other notable people, but not so much Iger. Well, it turns out I was a little bit ahead of myself by exactly 1 day. Because literally 1 day after I said that on the channel, there was a CNBC interview with Bob Iger that basically discussed a lot about the actor strike, a lot about the writer's strike, but also some of the stuff, the future of the company as a whole, the future of Marvel, Star Wars, Disney Plus, where they see things like Hulu, FX, Fox, ABC, the network, Freeform, where they see all these different arms, ESPN even they talk a lot about, where they see all these different arms of the Walt Disney Company going. But I'm going to pull up a couple of things here for you, and TJ, I'll let you read these out. And just kind of where do you want to go first with this? Because there's a lot of stuff here that he talked about.
First.
We can start on what first? Sorry, this one.
Purchase. That is.
Oh, the purchase. Okay, yeah. And again, this is probably the biggest grain of salt. So this does not come directly from that CNBC interview. This has been a slow rollout since that interview of people saying a couple days ago that there's reportedly a potential for a complete sale of the company to a third party. And now today, really, a lot of different places are now running that story, which just following news and stuff like that leads me to believe that, you know, when there's a certain amount of smoke, there could be fire. So why don't you take it away and tell us about what the hell's going on here?
I mean, I don't really know much. I didn't even know about this rumor until before we 5 minutes before we started. You had it on like our little notes right here.
Yeah.
So you're just reading this off a Apple News Twitter. It says, breaking, Disney CEO Bob Iger is considering selling streaming services and other assets to Apple. May even try to sell the entire Disney in the coming 3 years. To me, this is something that I cannot believe. I would not believe it. I can't believe that Disney would sell to another company. Mm-hmm. What would the motive be? You know, Disney is one of the wealthiest companies in the world, one of the most successful companies in the world. Obviously, Apple is I'd probably say maybe the
Apple's bigger, I think.
Apple's definitely bigger.
Yeah.
But like, I don't see them getting in the theme park game. Mm-hmm. I don't see them getting in.
To be fair, though, this could quite literally be a real-life Waystar Royco. I mean, it could be of this company that you're like, well, they're not really theme parks.
You have a very large problem if you let Apple buy Disney. I think you have a interest problem where, you know, how big is one company allowed to get?
Yeah, you know? 100%.
You know, because not only will they own Disney, they'll also own Fox. Mm-hmm. They will have Marvel, you know, all these other studios, etc. Yeah. You know, what is the end game there? Where do we stop and say, Apple, you cannot buy anything else?
Mm-hmm. And do we really want Tim Apple running the Xmen?
You know, and I think they're, you know, I feel like they're doing so far so good with, you know, Apple TV Plus. I know they got a few hits. I know people really like Silo. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Ted Lasso was a big hit.
Hijack. They've got on the film front. They have their first full theatrical releases of Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon coming up both this fall.
Yeah, so I don't really know if I think they're fine. I don't really think they need Disney. I don't think Disney needs Apple. I think Disney just needs to, and this just goes for all studios in general in Hollywood. They just need to make better decisions. They need to make movies for less money.
Yes.
To turn more of a profit.
Period.
I mean, obviously pay the writers and actors their dues as well, but yeah, I don't see this in any upcoming years. I know people are like, well, it could happen, you know, by the end of his tenure.
As soon as tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, like or
which, by the way, we should specify his tenure has been extended. When he originally came in to replace Chapek, it was on a temporary, I believe, 20-month contract. And that has now been fully signed onto a contract that will take him, I believe, to December 31st, 2026. So it'll take him up to 2027. I
just don't see that happening. Plus, as much as I do love, you know, I love Apple. I shouldn't say love. That's weird. I like Apple a lot. You know, I have an iPhone. I have a MacBook. I have Apple TV.
I'll say I love Apple TV Plus. I would say I would go that far.
To how I say sanitize Disney. How it's very, you know, Apple's very, and it's kind of like that joke where it's like in the Fairly Odd Parents. You know, you had like the corporate fairies.
Yeah.
And you see like sometimes with, like I'd say like McDonald's, for example, all the buildings now are like gray.
Where'd the color go? Yeah.
Like where the I feel like if Disney bought or if Apple buys Disney, that's what we're gonna get. It's
Hmm.
gonna be kind of like this kind of watered down, and hey, those prices would be going up. You think the prices are bad now? They'd be going way up if Apple bought Disney, by the way, for whatever theme
Oh
park,
yeah.
you know. Um but no, I don't think this whatever. I would be shocked.
Yeah. Now
Unless something like terrible happened, unless something terrible happened to Disney where it's
yeah.
like they're crippling and they needed saving.
And again, the other thing to keep in mind here is, I think the particular tweet, the particular one that we read out here, um, and again, we should emphasize this is not something that Variety is running. That Bob Iger is selling to Apple. This is just something that clearly people are talking about in the industry that is out there. So we wanted to talk about it. But again, I think maybe the most realistic thing we could be looking at is maybe parts. Now this was a Variety headline. I believe it was Variety. It might have been Deadline. That said, Bob Iger, who once, went on a buying spree to bolster this company. It said basically Bob Iger is now setting up a Disney garage sale, where he's selling off parts. Now that is something I could see potentially happening, because one of the things in the CNBC interview that he talked at great length about was finding partnerships for ESPN, something to, as they love this term, to de-risk ESPN, but also get somebody on board with the and I'm just remembering this off the top of my head, what he kept saying, the incredibly unique platform that is ESPN. I think I could see maybe that. I could see Apple getting into sports, because they do have a big presence with soccer, with Premier League, right? It's pretty much MLS. Sorry, there you go. Which Messi is now playing for, what, Florida?
Inter Miami, yes.
There you go. Wow, I know things.
Misco.
Yeah, and there was somebody got a picture of him at like a Costco or something.
Yeah,
and they were like, look at this guy
going grocery shopping with his family. Then there's this video of him. He's getting like an escort. I don't know to where. He's getting an escort, and he like runs a red light and almost gets T-boned.
Oh my god, what a legend! He's got to adapt. You got to let him adapt. But moving on here to some of the other things that he was discussing here in the CNBC thing, and then obviously we are still gearing up to our main topic here. We'll talk about his comments on the writer's strike towards the end here. But two things that he has talked about is in regards to Disney Plus and some theatrical as well. He has acknowledged, and pretty well in the interview, he did fully fess up and say, and I think that's true, and it's one of the things that people like about Bob Iger is that he's not the kind of, no offense, I don't know why I'm apologizing to David Zaslav, but no offense to David Zaslav, he's not the Flash is the best comic book movie I've ever seen in my life. Bob Iger will kind of say, we need to kind of do a little bit better on some of these things, or the audience didn't respond to this or that of certain items. And he said Bob Iger has acknowledged that Pixar movies going straight to Disney Plus has caused an impact on the demand for seeing new Pixar movies in theaters. However, he also adds that the studio has had some creative misses. And then something that did not include that he did say in the interview, because I did watch the entire CNBC interview, is he said as well that they asked him, they said, do you think, for whatever the reason or not, do you think that the loss of John Lasseter from the company, which now was 5 years ago, had an impact, on the overall, just because, somebody unfortunately can be an incredibly, profound creative person who just understands the business and is a great creative mind, and also a terrible person like John Lasseter is. But, it is to be said that John Lasseter was at the head of Pixar from the beginning, almost handpicked by George Lucas. And to his credit, Bob Iger did say, he said, well, it's not just been John Lasseter, but there has been some creative and executive turnover that, I think did impact the company. So what are your thoughts on all this stuff with Pixar? Obviously, we've talked about before, the string of Disney Plus releases for Pixar, I think really hampered it. We saw that especially with Lightyear. Again, Elemental kind of bouncing back a little bit, but not where they want it to be. Certainly not where Pixar movies used to make, $600-800 million easily, and sometimes even $1 billion. Nowhere near those kind of numbers. So what do you think about his comments here about Pixar? What do you think could be a potential, way back for Pixar at this point?
I mean, I think personally they probably need to walk back the whole kind of, movies coming to streaming a few, weeks later. You don't have to go to the theater. I think that really is a big kind of sign of, people having obviously these streaming services, but just, it's like, well, if I only have to wait a few weeks, like why would I go pay, $15 or $12 for a ticket, $20 to concessions when I could just, I had my one-time fee this month. I could sit down and watch whatever Pixar movie. I will say, you did bring up John Lasseter. It's not like every single movie has been a bust since he left,
Exactly. That is a very good point.
We had Luca. We had
Toy Story 4.
Toy Story 4, so it's not like every single movie was just like, oh, just terrible. I think and obviously there's been some misses, but I do think the whole kind of, and again, pandemic, pushing everything to Disney Plus and giving people that option has probably pushed people away from coming to the theater to see new movies.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you don't just see that with Pixar. You see that with, every single movie that comes out.
Mm-hmm. Even something like a Ruby Gillman, too. I mean, you look at, partially Peacock has set that example, too, with DreamWorks is, Puss in Boots, they held off a long time adding it to Peacock because it was so successful at the box office. But, some other DreamWorks releases and just some other NBC Universal releases as well, you see going to Peacock pretty soon. I know, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Fast X already on Peacock? Isn't that on there already, I think, maybe?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, but they've been incredibly quick. They're another one that's been incredibly quick. Yeah. But really, I think Max and Disney Plus have really realized that they really shot themselves in the foot with that. I mean, I think if they had stuck permanently with the what did they even call it? Premier Access? Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
Premier, whatever it was called.
$25.
Like exactly. With what was it that fell into that? Black Widow and Mulan, I think, were the two that they mainly did. Which I still haven't even seen that Mulan movie, unfortunately. I mean, I've heard it wasn't even that bad, but I haven't seen it. I have no interest in a Mulan movie that has no music. I'm sorry. Unlike our friend Travis, I don't mind no Mushu, but no music, no me. But I think if they had stuck with that for the Pixar movies and said, hey, this is still a premium product that we, want families to be able to enjoy. And sure, Onward, that's a different story. That was right at the pandemic. That Onward got its legs, no pun intended, because of what the movie Onward is about. Onward got its legs taken out from under it, literally, because it was right in the middle of the shutdown. So Onward, I understood putting on there, by itself. That was really, it was just unfortunate that literally the week of the pandemic, it was a big Pixar movie. And I just think that Pixar never really recovered from that habit. I think they went, oh my God, look at the numbers for Onward, because it was one of the biggest releases on Disney Plus. And I think they just went, look at the numbers for Onward. Let's see if Soul does the same thing. Oh my God, look at that. Let's see if Turning Red will do the same thing. And I think that they just got themselves into this habit that unfortunately I think it's really left a lasting impact. And you have to retrain audiences Look at Guardians of the Galaxy, right? There was a time when Multiverse of Madness came out on May 4th. It was on Disney Plus on like June 25th, so it's something like that, or July 4th or something, a very quick time. And Marvel has learned from that. And now you look, Guardians is 4 months, basically, before it goes on to Disney Plus. And I think that windows like that are just going to keep getting longer. But I think Pixar, being one of the majorly impacted brands, they're just going to have to find some way out of this. I'm unfortunately, and I don't know, maybe they never do. To be honest, maybe they never do, because they've just really conditioned families into thinking about it like that. Next up here, Bob Iger says, Marvel Studios' increase in movie output and introduction of TV shows has diluted audiences' focus and attention on the overall Marvel brand. And before I get your thoughts on that, I just want to throw in, too, another comment he did make off of that was that both in the cost of production, so the spending, and the amount of production, so the amount of titles, he said they're going to be decreasing the output of both Marvel and Star Wars in the future here. So what are your kind of thoughts on this, of his comments on Marvel and the potential of all these shows and different titles diluting the overall MCU brand, basically?
Yeah, I think I feel like maybe MCU, movies, especially just going to the theater, I feel like maybe they don't have as much, they don't have the kind of eventness that they used to. I think definitely adding more shows and all this content, et cetera, to consume, to maybe even follow the story for other movies, definitely puts a strain on audiences, and maybe turns them off to the whole idea of the MCU. So yeah, I could definitely see that. They've already said, like you said, they're gonna cut back on the output of content, which I think is good. We don't need multiple movies and multiple shows a year. The next one is the Marvels, and that's still another few months away, which I think is good. And they just have to kind of up the quality.
Yeah.
They've just been, especially with the shows, they've been suffering lately, as well as the movies. When's the last time we were like gangbusters about an MCU movie?
I know. I mean, it's like, the last time that I should say the last time we were like gangbusters about an MCU movie that the public was as well was probably No Way Home. I mean, Guardians 3 is a beloved movie, and I think an incredible movie and a huge box office success. But at the same time, apart from maybe the first 2 weekends, I would say, of people saying like, oh my God, Rocket, what they did with Rocket, oh my God, it's so good. After that, it just kind of, died out. Like, No Way Home was like an event, like a cultural event. And then honestly, for the shows, I don't think it ever got bigger. Well, I don't think it ever got bigger than WandaVision right at the beginning. It was. I don't think it. But I don't think they ever, got bigger in terms of the discussion and the cultural impact than they did with WandaVision. And then I would say probably like Loki was the second most, and then probably like Hawkeye or Moon Knight maybe third most, and then that's 3. That's 3 or 4 titles. And by the way, 3 or 4 of the first titles out in the first year, that, out of what? There's been 9 total titles on Disney Plus. And again, I think also another key thing here that I think, we don't want to lose out on is I think those special presentations that they did last year were really good. Both of them. Werewolf by Night was fantastic and a lot of fun. And by all means, a very, very quick and cheap production that I think a lot of people loved. Another quick and cheap production, the Guardians Holiday Special. I think a lot of people loved that special. So I think it's important for them to look at, if I was Marvel Studios, this is what I would do. I would say, and I know this is going to get, I might be crazy, because they've been doing 3 movies, sometimes 4 movies for years, not even just since COVID. I mean, they were on 3 movies a year in 2017. I think you scale back to 2 movies per year, 2 shows per year, and 2 special presentations per year. That is 6 MCU titles per year, which in any other franchise is like unthinkable. But yeah, sorry.
You say that about the special presentation because I could have sworn I just saw something a few days ago that was like it didn't do the numbers that they wanted to, and that they were like looking at not doing them anymore. I could be wrong.
See, but I would believe that too. I would believe that, but also it's like it's all about risk versus reward, because it's like I don't know, these numbers are going to be totally wrong, so don't hold me to this. But like,
if I'm being honest,
what'd you say, sorry?
6 seems like a lot.
See, I think it is a lot, but you got to remember, look at 2021. We got 3 movies and 5 shows.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's what we got in 2021. Yeah. We got 3 movies and 5 shows. And I think in terms of money saving, if you 3 movies, 5 shows, in terms of money saving, if you go from 3 $200 million blockbusters to 2, and you just cut off an entire movie, I think that is a huge savings. Then make your shows. This is exactly how I would break it down. If you want to spend $200 million because you're a Marvel movie, I still think that's probably too much money. But let's just say 2 $200 million blockbusters, 2 $100 million shows, and then 2
that's still a lot for a show. $30
million that's special presentations.
Going straight to a streaming service with no offset to that cost.
It is high, but I'm just focused on lowering it from where it is. Because I don't know if you saw this, but Secret Invasion reportedly had a budget of $215 million.
That is crazy.
Where is it? Where? Is it over there? Is it over here? I don't know. It's not in Nick Fury's beard budget, I'll tell you that much. That's not where it is, because that is not Sam Jackson's facial hair. I'm just focused on lowering it from where it's at. And again, in terms of you talking about perhaps maybe the special presentations didn't do as much viewership as they wanted. I mean, if you're talking about a $25 to $40 million special presentation, and let's say if that gets 1 million views, or I'm just being very general here with the numbers, but like, that's got to be better than a $250 million show that gets 2 million views. Double the views is not worth 5 times the budget. And I feel like it's those things. They're like, we don't have any money. We don't have enough money. You're putting it in all these things that you're not seeing in the final product. You know what I mean? And a lot of people have said about Secret Invasion, where's the $215 million? It's in reshoots, extensive reshoots, changing endings, changing things like that. How many times have we heard that just this year alone with like Ant-Man 3, that everybody was saying the movie came out in February, they reshot the ending at the end of December. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and not just the ending, but the third act they reshot. So it's pretty crazy. I mean, they've got to get the spending under control. And on the Star Wars side as well. I mean, Star Wars has a lot more problems than just money right now. But as beautiful and amazing as Andor was and how it looked, you can't spend $250 million on a show like Andor. You just can't. I mean, as much as everybody loved it, we know it did not. $250 million was the budget of season 1 of Andor. Yeah. Now, to be fair, you see it. You see that in Andor.
It seemed kind of not like low budget, but I felt like they could have done what they did for relatively.
See, the problem is that with Star Wars, it feels. You go, oh, I mean, it feels low budget because it's real locations and stuff, but then you got to remember, Star Wars doesn't exist. So it's like, it's real, like the prison, you're like, oh, that's a real, I can feel the walls in the Narkina prison. I can feel them, under my fingers just by watching the show. The set looks that good, but you got to remember, it's a massive set. and that set needs to be built. You know what I mean? It's like that is unfortunately the double-edged sword of why they were like, hey, Disney Plus, we're going to really heavily use this volume thing, was to save money. But then now it's everybody's going, well, we don't want the volume. It looks terrible. Real sets, screws and bricks. But, screws and bricks cost money. A lot of money.
One quick, just last thing
Absolutely.
I think on this, and then we'll move on. It's just a thought, and I don't know if this would ever happen, but do you think any of these services, say you have like a shorter series, kind of not like an Andor, because Andor's what, 10 episodes? How long was it?
12 episodes.
12 episodes, yeah, so too long. Maybe even a 4 episode. Do you think any of these services ever consider the whole, let's put an episode out in theaters? Let's do a 4-night thing. You get a new episode each night. You gotta come back, see the full thing.
I think.
Do you think anybody ever tries that or no?
Well, I think
what the cost would be, because you got to pay for the whole exhibition and all that stuff. But
yeah, I think it's a good indication of that is going to be Ms. Marvel, because another part of this that's part of the strike talk that we're going to talk about in a little bit here, is that Ms. Marvel is going to be airing on ABC next month. And that's, sure, you could say, well, it was always going to do that because it was to promote the Marvels. Yeah, no, it's just because ABC doesn't have any shows to promote, or any shows to, they don't have anything filmed to air, basically. They need to pad out their numbers. That's why CBS announced this week that Yellowstone, starting with season 1, is going to start airing on CBS. And that leads to a big question of, okay, well then, that's going to be a big indicator of if all of a sudden the Ms. Marvel creator is making thousands of dollars in residuals for the network show versus, 84 cents in residuals for the streaming show, something's not adding up there about Ms. Marvel and the amount of residuals that they're making. But I only say that because Ms. Marvel is now going to be on network TV. But if you remember back to when Ms. Marvel aired, it originally aired in theaters in Pakistan. I remember we talked about that story that it did actually have a theatrical release, and they did exactly that 1 week it was the first 2 episodes, next week it was the next 2, and then the final week was the last 2 episodes. So I think Ms. Marvel is going to be the first Disney Plus thing, whether it be a movie or a show, that they're going to get a sample size of how a show like this can do on network, how a show like this can do on Disney Plus, and how a show like this can perform in a theatrical environment, even if it wasn't, a domestically theatrical environment, if it was, a international territory. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Ms. Marvel does on network, and I think it'll give them an idea of how some of these things can perform. But moving on here to the last thing that he talked about, which was they asked him about the current writer's strike and the potential of the Screen Actors Guild strike, because this interview was the morning that they were voting the strike through, and this basically led him to say the thing that directly contradicted when I was like, oh, Bob Iger's not really the villain of this strike. I should have said yet, because then he gave a terrible statement, which was basically, that he's disheartened and deeply disturbed by the, greedy wants of the actors and the writers. And, we made a great deal with the Directors Guild, and we want to make a great deal with the Writers Guild and the Screen Actors Guild. And, obviously there's a lot more that we're going to talk about here with SAG and everything, but what were your thoughts when you saw all these original articles of just, it was very, no pun intended, fast and furious coming out against Bob Iger of just like, how tone deaf can you be, and just how, and also not to mention this was right after he announced that he was re-upping his contract. It was announced that his yearly salary for this year was going to be $27 million. That's not including his potential hundreds of millions of dollars in bonuses. So a lot to break down here, but what were your initial thoughts on all this Bob Iger stuff?
Yeah, just a very bizarre comment, I thought.
Yeah.
Very unnecessary kind of just I don't know what it because I don't think I don't know if the executives of the studios understand. And I saw, I had watched Dan Murrow's video too on this, about half an hour long. Everybody should go check it out. Do they not know that they cannot play the woe is me card? That, oh my God, this is so difficult. We're still recovering from COVID. We're seeing declining audience coming to the theater, and here come these actors and writers coming to want more money with their hands out. And it's like, do you not know how much money you're making yearly? One is a salary. How much are you producing these shows and movies for? As we talked about already, lower the fucking budget. God damn. If they're not, if it's not doing as well in the theaters, then maybe you guys should make it for less. And again, pay the writers and actors what they're due. Not every actor or writer specifically, maybe 0.05% of the actors and writers in the industry are like the big well-off ones. There's so many writers and actors that are living paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay rent, trying to pay their bills. And if you don't, for example, pay them their residuals, they can't continue to live and try and work their job. So I don't understand the whole kind of like trying to paint and maybe it's just because, not everybody, I'm sure, a bunch of people think like, oh, like you act in Hollywood or you write in Hollywood, you must be, making the bank and, raking in all the money, when that's not what happens. That's not the reality.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if this comment was to kind of, get the people that think that way on their side to be like, what are these actors and writers complaining about? They get compensated great,
Yeah.
It was just a very bizarre comment to me, and especially for someone who tone deaf and somebody who I feel like out of all the executives has the most goodwill with consumers. I feel like you just kind of threw that away.
Dude, that is exactly what I said last week. Like, literally, I couldn't believe that I said that on the show last week. I literally was like, out of Zaslav and all them, Iger's the one that, has the most public goodwill. And then literally a day later, all this happened, and I was just like, well, there you go. I literally said the words, Iger hasn't been the villain of this strike. And then there you go, just immediately foot in mouth disorder. And Jeff Snyder kept using this term, and I don't think it's unwanted, but I think it's like unwanted error, I think, which is just basically like, who is making these decisions at Disney that, you are, like I said, foot and mouth disease of, you are literally voluntarily going on TV and just getting the worst press possible for yourself, that no one else made you say that. I was watching the interview. Nobody had a wire on the back of Bob Iger, making him say stuff. And I just think, it's just so crazy to me that you would choose at a time where you were definitely in a writer's strike and you knew that there was a potential that while you're giving the interview, SAG could be going on strike. It ended up going through a couple hours later. But, like, while you're giving the interview, you know that you are virtually on the verge of an actor's strike and the writer's strike that has already been going on. To give those comments, it just absolutely insane. And again, I think people are pointing out accurately that, you got to keep in perspective. You can complain all you want about Iger making $27 million, but don't lose sight of the big fish in the pond, and that's, in the past 5 years, David Zaslav has made a combined $498 million in salaries and bonuses in the past 5 years at either Warner Brothers Discovery or just Discovery before that. And also Walter Hamada at Warner Brothers before that was making, hundreds of millions of dollars as well. So although Bob Iger is a insanely high paid executive, he is not even the biggest fish in this pond. There is Zaslav and other people above him as well, that are, just like you said, woe is me of how are you complaining that these people want, I'm not sure the percentages, but I remember distinctly that they talked about everything the writers want is a 2% impact to bottom line. That's it. And now you could say, well, 2% is a lot. Sure it is, but you can't have any percent if you don't have the people who make the content. Like, that's the thing is that, and I know Iger also said, we made a very good deal with the directors, and, basically one of the proposals that they gave to the Screen Actors Guild was, well, here's the percentage increase that we gave to the directors. That's what we're going to offer you. And that's why a lot of people were very upset when the Directors Guild voted to take the proposal and made that, midnight deal, as it's referred to, because now everything's going to be compared to, well, the directors accepted that. Why can't you guys accept that?
Right.
And, is that completely fair to the directors? Not necessarily. If they were happy with their proposal, there's no need for them to force themselves to be out of work. I understand that too, but, it's just tough because it's where do you draw the line between solidarity and, having to look after your own people too. So I can understand that from the directors, but let's dig in a little bit deeper to this SAG strike and everything like that here. So TJ, I if you want to look at our notes here, if you want to just take one by one here, I'll highlight the information. You can just kind of cherry pick. But the first one that I really want to talk about, we don't even have to hit on all of these. I have some ones that I really want to hit to, and then some ones that I'm not seeing a lot of people talk about some of these other things. But the first one that obviously is probably the biggest thing for the actors, whereas obviously the AI component is right now, along with pay, but the AI thing is really, really the big thing on the Writers Guild, because it's much easier for AI to write out text than it is to do these creative endeavors. But believe me, they are still trying to use AI to get rid of actors. But the biggest thing here is residuals. So this is not even talking about just base payment, which is another issue that they're talking about, but the residual system essentially. Think about back in the day. Let's use Alan Alda as an example. Alan Alda was on MASH for 9 years. Alan Alda's residual checks for MASH were probably for decades thousands of dollars every time he got a residual check. Thousands of dollars. And you get a residual check every single month from your guild. You get a residual check every month. And it was probably thousands of dollars, and I'm just using Alan Alda as an example for MASH. That was the first thing came to my head. You could say Ted Danson for whatever. Maybe even a better example, let's say Kelsey Grammer on Cheers, right? Not Ted Danson on Cheers, but Kelsey Grammer. Is he in every episode or most episodes? Yes, but he's not the biggest guy in the show. Still, Kelsey Grammer, even without Frasier, could have lived off of his residual checks for Cheers because they were just that much money. You're now talking about, and that is because Nielsen ratings would release the accurate count of how much viewership each one of these titles was getting on original runs, reruns, syndication, everything like that. Everything was tracked. I mean, you used to be able to get a Nielsen book sent to your house showing you the TV ratings. You could check the TV ratings in the newspaper. TV ratings were such an accurate metric that you could, set your watch to them. They were that accurate. And now when you're hearing people say nebulous things like Netflix doesn't release its numbers, this is what you're talking about. Is Netflix goes, Red Notice is the number one thing we've ever had on Netflix. And a big title that was in the original Netflix heydays that is getting a lot of press this week is Orange is the New Black. Obviously a huge successful show for them. A ton of actors and actresses from Orange is the New Black coming forward saying, that their residual checks are 80 cents a month. Not hundreds of dollars, not tens of dollars, 81 cents a month.
Can I tell you real quick why
the
stuff on Netflix did not surprise me whatsoever? It's because they just operate on billions of dollars of debt. So what makes me think that they would be paying their actors or writers fine residuals when they can't even, afford to, they barely run their own business, for Christ's sake, Like
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
struggling as it is. So to me that was not surprising whatsoever.
Yeah, I know there's tons. You could just go on Twitter. There's discussing film is just putting out, basically just quotes of actors on the picket lines, saying things. I know Jessica Chastain was on the picket lines today, literally reading out statistics about it. But here's a little bit more on just the overall pay increase. So basically, the long and short of the residual thing is they want these streamers to release their full numbers so that they can get the equivalent residuals to network TV, basically, because network TV is dying. So those aren't thousands of dollars anymore because people aren't watching network TV the way that they're watching. So those are going down, and the streaming residuals are basically next to nothing because they're just not accurately telling these guilds how much and how many people are watching. So they really have no accountability to be honest with how much they owe these actors, which is crazy. And again, there's just tons, there's dozens of examples that you can look up for every single one of these kind of points that we're going to talk about here. The next one is just that base pay that we were talking about, of the same percentage increase that they gave the directors. Basically, in the AMPTP, which is the Producers Guild, so basically all the heads of all the studios and all the streamers, that is basically who these strikes are against, is because they are the kind of voting body that decides on these kind of things. Basically, it says that in their proposal, it gave a 5% overall increase to most minimum rates in the first year of the contract, which is the same offer that they made the Directors Guild. SAG argued that does not keep pace with inflation and has demanded 11% for the first minimum year contract. And they basically came back saying, no, we will not do that. And then overall here, the number SAG is looking for an increase of 230% increase in foreign streaming residuals, according to a studio source. The AMPTP is offering the same increase provided to the DGA, which is a 76% increase. So basically, if your residual check is $1, the SAG is arguing, it should be $230. Or sorry, technically, wouldn't that make it $3.30? Because if it's a 230% increase, that would mean that's on top of what they're already making, right? Math. Okay, fair enough. Says the accountant. Yeah, exactly. But man, that's a great Ben Affleck movie, The Accountant. Basically, giving them the shit end of the stick, because to be honest, like you said, there is like the 1% of actors that, don't have to worry about a lot of this stuff. And then there's the other 155,560 actors that are in SAG. So you take the first top 1% of 500 actors. If you took the top 500 actors, that's all your Meryl Streeps, your Paul Rudds, your Benedict Cumberbatches, your, everybody, your Chris Hemsworths. If you took all of them out of there, you would still be left with 155,000 SAG members. SAG consists of 160,000 actors, most of which can't even afford healthcare. I believe Jessica Chastain was the one who said that 87% of SAG does not meet the yearly minimum of income to qualify for healthcare through the union, which is just absolutely insane.
$3.03. You're right.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, they want basically fair pay here. Another big one is the self-tape audition. So during COVID, because casting offices were closed, everything like that, the self-tape became basically the only way that you were going to get a job, which is, set your phone up on a stand, set it up on a pile of books, and record yourself and send it in to us. Hey, we're going to take that just like any other, audition. We promise, we won't hold it against you, which a lot of people are thinking, still that it is kind of held against you, that, it's not going to be taken as seriously as if you're in the room. So a big other thing they want is to go back. Really, what they want is to go back to the original system of in-person auditioning, because they argue that that experience, making those connections in casting offices, is basically, that is in essential component of being an actor, is being able to go to these places, meet other actors, meet casting directors, get in the room essentially. And if you're just doing everything from home, it's not basically the same. It's not giving you the same ability. So they want that to be tamped down on. And the best that they came back for in their proposal was that they would make efforts to lessen basically the amount of self-tape auditions out there. So before we get into some of these other things, let's just talk in general about all this stuff, about the strike and everything. What are your thoughts overall? How do you feel about it? What is some of the stuff that you wanna hit on here? And that goes for chat as well.
Sorry, let me look at the. Yeah, can we just talk about the whole AI thing?
Let's go for it. Yeah, and the background actors and owning them forever.
Yeah, so if you didn't see, basically one of the things that the AMPTP brought to the negotiating table was that the use of AI, where they would, scan a background actor, an extra or whatever, and they pay them for that day, but then they would own their likeness in perpetuity, and they could use them in anything, and they wouldn't have to get their consent.
Mm-hmm.
And
I heard somebody relate that to like stock images today.
Yeah.
It was Jennifer Landa on the Force Center podcast. She was like, I did stock images, and Simu Liu, everybody was like making fun of him that there's a lot of stock images out there for him. But like, that's kind of the same thing as you go into Getty Images or stock images, a place like that, they pay you a couple grand, and literally the deal is they get to use your picture forever for whatever people want. And this would basically be the same thing for actors. But yeah, sorry, continue. It's just crazy.
It's a bizarre, like, kind of like, they're asking for these things, and then they're gonna go to the table and be like, yeah, but like, what if we just owned your likeness like forever?
Mm-hmm.
And we would only have to pay them for the day, and then they wouldn't have to come and show up ever again. Like, why would anybody do that? That makes absolutely no sense. Why would the union agree to that?
I know.
Just like a
and to say that it was, and just the AMPTP said that they rejected a groundbreaking proposal. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Groundbreaking for what? Of how fucking insane it is? Like, what are you talking about? Like, owning people's likenesses. And I think it was in Dan's video. I didn't rewatch it, so you might have to correct me. Was he the one that talked about the Ben Affleck and Matt Damon thing?
I don't think so.
Okay, so basically, I don't know how many people know this. I didn't know this until I heard the story that Ben Affleck and Matt Damon started their entire Hollywood careers as background performers in movies in Boston. And they got to talking, and they made connections on set, and that led one thing into another. That led, eventually getting, work on other things, Saving Private Ryan, Chasing Amy, going, into making their own movie with Good Will Hunting and winning an Academy Award. And, obviously Matt Damon being one of the biggest stars in the world, Ben Affleck being one of the biggest stars and directors in the world right now. And imagine if instead... and those original contacts were made on set as background actors. Imagine if instead, Ben Affleck and Matt Damon got filmed for a couple of days, and then, got a big $2,000 check and went, oh my God, $2,000, awesome. And then never worked in Hollywood ever again because the studio just owned their likeness and never needed them to come back. Like, that's basically what we're talking about here. It's not just thinking about, how terrible that is on the human level, but think about how much talent would go to waste if, they just went to Meryl Streep when she was 25 and went, you know what, Meryl, you've been great in these first couple movies, but, we can actually just, if you just sit in this booth for a minute or two for us, record some lines in a voiceover booth so that we can, build this AI model, you're actually good. And we'll give you $5,000. We'll give you $5,000 for it. You know what I mean? Like, where is the
Have you
line
used it,
here?
right? No, just the one time. Just
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, you look at, obviously the pieces have been there in front of us all, like, for a long time. I mean, Peter Cushing was recreated. His family approved of that one, but and we're seeing it right now with a movie that's out right now. Last time I checked, Christopher Reeve has no living relatives, no living representation. So who approved of that cameo in The Flash for him to be recreated? And who would get that money? Who is running the Christopher Reeve estate? Did anybody give permission to that? That's just one example of just Christopher Reeve in a movie that just came out. Not to mention George Reeves, who is a much darker tale of really having no family, left alive, of, who knows if even anybody even approved of any of these cameos of these deceased actors. So there's very different situations that, I think really mean a lot of different things. But then you look at the voice side of it too, with Luke Skywalker and James Earl Jones and, with Darth Vader, of these AI engines now can be used to just recreate these actors' entire performances. I mean, other than having a stand-in actor, like, think about Luke in Book of Boba Fett, right? Right now, you need a stand-in actor to apply a deepfake to, but how long until you can just apply a deepfake to a CGI character? When that happens, it's all over. When you can just throw a deepfake onto a CGI actor, that's it. That's the last step that they need. And then you got Mark Hamill's out the window, and you got Luke Skywalker for the rest of time, in the worst ways possible. So I mean, it's just insane. But what else you want to hit on here? And then I'll read some of these chats too that I haven't gotten to.
Let's do the residuals one, because again, I just find that so interesting. Like you said, Orange is the New Black. Sean Gunn talking about his residual checks from Gilmore Girls.
He was in like 100 episodes of that show.
Right. Some people saying, oh, I made 80 cents, on that show, etc. Just all kind of just, it's, again, when people think, oh, you work in Hollywood, that means you must be really like raking in. It's really not the case. Except for that like small percentage of people that you like are like the really big names. Them. They're in the cultural zeitgeist, as they say. That's just. And then again, like we said, the producer or the executives come and complain, and oh my God, they're asking for all this money, and we can barely stay afloat. And it's like, come on, like stop playing the whole woe is me card. We don't make enough money. It's like, how about maybe you take a pay cut, and then so the actors and writers who actually make the movies that the audiences want to see, so that they can get paid a decent a living wage.
And I don't know if you saw, but right before we went live, there was this story about the live action. What is it? Noah Centineo? Is that who it is? Yeah, the Masters of the Universe movie. They scrapped it after 3 years of production. They cast Noah Centineo, $30 million worth of production, and then they just cut it. But they don't have $15 million to pay their writers better, or money to pay their actors better. And then the whole story about Ted Sarandos years and years ago at this party at his house, giving this speech saying, Orange is the New Black is doing more viewership than Game of Thrones, when at that exact time, the majority of the Orange is the New Black cast was making, $10,000 an episode. Some of them were making, up to $250,000 an episode. But then at the same time, Kit Harington and Emilia Clarke were making $900, $1 million per episode on Game of Thrones. So it's like a lot of the Orange is the New Black cast was like, wait, what was that? We're being watched more than Game of Thrones? Then why am I making literally 10 times less than the actors on Game of Thrones that, are getting accurately reported numbers. And so you just think about that with Orange is the New Black, and then you think about that with all these Netflix shows. And I really want to know, what about some of the more current Netflix stuff? Like, when is Millie Bobby Brown going to come out and talk about, maybe some of her pay, or maybe even somebody further down the cast list, like Joseph Quinn, right, who played Eddie Munson in this most recent season of him. What are his Stranger Things residuals looking like? You know what I mean? Because I would assume they're not thousands of dollars. I would assume. But then also it's like, and it'd be one thing if, okay, well, maybe you're thinking to yourself, well, maybe the streaming residuals aren't that much, but don't streaming actors get paid way more, like as just a paycheck? No, not really necessarily. No, that's not usually how it works. I mean, because you're going in, signing a contract, seeing the percentage, going, oh, okay, that's the same percentage I make on this. The problem is when it's a percentage of views, if Netflix is the one saying what the views are, and if they're underreporting those numbers, you're not going to make as much money. I mean, as people that are not as affected by this are like, you look at, some actors that are on like network shows, like a Grey's Anatomy or stuff, their residuals don't look that much different because those are still on there. And that's why you see, some actors being really upset when shows are moved from network to streaming. That's another big problem is, a show like, I don't know, I'll throw it out, like, I don't know, like Chicago Med or something. Like, when Chicago Med gets aired on Peacock, are they making as much money as they made when it aired on CBS or on NBC? I don't think so. And that's the problem, is that there's really no way to know without these streaming services being forced to accurately report their numbers. And a proposal that SAG-AFTRA made was, well, listen, if you don't want to release your numbers, we don't necessarily want that. We just want some reliable way to track all of this. So they came together and they said, well, what if we go through a third party with this Parrot Analytics company, which Dan Merle, actually, he uses them to do his streaming charts and to track certain streaming numbers. He uses this website, Parrot Analytics, to which the AMPTP said, well, no, you can't use them either because they're just not reliable. And it's like, well, okay, so I can't use a third party and I can't use a first party because you won't let me know them, so I just can't know how much money I'm owed. And they basically just went, yep, basically, we're just not going to tell you how much money you're owed, which is just insane. But, I mean,
I think I might soon hop on the train of some of these streaming services. I think they might be kind of dead.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I like the content on Paramount Plus, that's the big one right now. Is that so many articles come out. Just Paramount Plus is just like, they have I think about Niagara Falls. They have leveraged themselves so far over the edge of the I always associate it with Obama, the fiscal cliff, right? Everybody used to talk about we're inching towards the fiscal cliff. Paramount has got their big toe stuck on the cliff, and everything else is hanging off over the edge right now.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say, we've seen it more and more. I feel like it's something we haven't seen a lot till very recently, maybe ever. I could be wrong. But the whole kind of just removing things off of services. Obviously, we have like Netflix, they're licensing out. Oh, license expires. Okay, whatever. But like the whole kind of, we saw with Paramount Plus, like you said, like the whole Rise of the Pink Ladies thing. Like they just took it off the service. So do those actors?
And then a month later, it got nominated for 3 Emmys.
Right. So nobody gets those residuals, correct?
Correct.
It's not showing. There's no audience for it.
Yeah.
But like, can you to me, like, how is that like
legal?
Very, like it's just
I don't know.
Very shady.
Like I just, this one tweet just sticks with me. I think it was Lon Harris. He just said, with the amount of like these deleting this for, so you can make a show and then just be like, oh, it didn't do that good. All right, never mind. We deleted the show forever. The show's gone. Don't worry about it.
All right.
And then to like somehow recoup something on it, like at what point does this stop being a business tactic and start just being like fraud or like money laundering? You know what I mean? Like at what point you can't just like put $100 million into a project and then just be like, oh, we didn't make enough money back, so we're just going to delete it so we don't have to pay anybody. Like at what point is that just like a literal crime? I don't know, but all right, to close out here, let's talk a little bit about these chats that we got here. Michelle in the chat says, Marvel Marvel pulling back a bit. I can see. I think things are suffering on quality. They need to put as much heart into them, like the first phases. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is an example of doing it right. I think we both agree with that for sure. As far as Star Wars, the content is getting better. The shows especially have really been coming out very cinematic looks. I can agree with that. I think, story-wise on Mando Season 3, maybe not the best, but I think it was definitely the best-looking season so far. And then, obviously, Andor, I think just fantastic on that front. And then Iger made himself the villain of this strike. He is out of touch and had an air of elitist about him during that interview. It was unsettling. And then in order to qualify for health insurance under SAG, you have to earn $26,000 during that year. And it isn't even a full year. It's just the time after you got to that 26,000. Yeah, so exactly. So you have to, the minimum requirement is to make $26,000. That makes you eligible for the healthcare. But that's not like a rolling healthcare year. That means, let's say it took you until March to make $26,000 as an actor. That means your health insurance wouldn't start until March. It's not like they then backdate it to the end of to the beginning of the year. It's okay, you've hit the threshold, now we'll give you health insurance. So it's basically insane that so many people don't qualify for it, because it's almost just an impossible metric to hit if you're not somebody that's, the marquee name on a poster or something like that, or even the marquee name on a network show. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing she said was, it's just like our economy, the top 1% gets billions and the rest of us are getting 70-cent residual checks. Yeah. I mean, it's all the same animal. It's all the same beast at the end of the day, but really terrible stuff, unfortunately, but we will continue to talk about it. We will continue to check in on it, everything like that. TJ, anything else you want to talk about with the SAG strike before we wrap things up here tonight?
No, I think that's all I got. Again, really kind of just a shitty situation. Hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
The writers and actors get their due. But we could be in this for another few months.
Yep.
I've heard like October, November. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. Again, we talked about at the very, very top of the show that if you're just joining us now, we are not a member of SAG. We are not a member of the WGA. We, of course, are in solidarity with them, with their efforts and everything like that. But things are going to continue on this channel just like normal. For now, we will be covering Ahsoka when it comes out. I may be covering the end of Secret Invasion if it gets a little bit better. But stay tuned. Be sure, if you're watching this right now, give a like, give a comment. If you're watching this on the replay, make sure you subscribe. We are on our pathway to 600 subscribers. Thanks to you guys. We really appreciate it. And then the last thing I'll tell you too, right up there in the corner, follow us at the official PFN on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and potentially now Threads. I think I'm going to migrate our Instagram over to Threads. But Threads is, I think, still in its very early infancy. But follow us on all those platforms. And till then, I think that will do it for us. I have been one of your hosts, Sean Monk. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight.
I've been another host, TJ Cornwell. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought about any of the topics in the comments below. See you.
Boom.